I'm going to follow the pacing method that everyone else has done up here. I want to first start out and thank you, brothers, for having me. It's a great honor to be here. I also want to thank brothers Dunning and Murphy and Lamb and all the other people that have gone before me for giving my talk for me already. It's great. Now, it really is, the talking about the synergy and of the fraternity. I feel like, it happens so often that you can get a bunch of speakers together and you don't tell them what the theme is, and they will all tend to overlap. Because we're all moving in the same direction. We're all having those same kind of ideas, or else we wouldn't be here, right? And so, I think it's interesting because my talk starts right off where Brother Hodap's talk sort of ended, so hopefully we'll have fun with this. So, this talk is broken into two parts. And the first part, we're going to talk about religious identification. We're going to talk about this, in particular, this generation that Chris had identified. We may have those are the people we're probably looking for, and how, and exactly why they're the people we're looking for. And then the second half of it will be so once we find them, what do we do with them? And so that's what we're hoping to accomplish in the brief time we have. So it's called Nuns in the Temple. There you go. There was a time, certainly in my memory in the fraternity, and I'm only 184 years old, but in my time when the lodges and the churches actually worked very closely together. We had St. John's Day celebrations, and the local lodge would gather together, and then they would put on all their regalia and they would march through town to the church for the service, and they would then participate in the St. John's Day service. That ended probably 20 years ago in Vermont. Virtually no lodges do it anymore, but it was part of that link when our society in the United States was fairly heavily bonded by one's religious affiliations. Your community was your church, and your church was your community in a large way. So that's no longer the case. In fact, as we see from here, this is all data that comes from the Pew Research Center. In 2014, the Pew Research Center started to do research on the evolving trends in the religious landscape in the United States. And that was when I very first was cued off that this might be important for Freemasonry. So one of the things they tracked was religious attendance in Canada and the United States. You see, in 1998, there were 54% of the population attended church regularly. It was a thing you did. But by 2012, we were only 46%. It would already start to drop. And that trend has continued on through as we've gone on. That was the last time their study specifically did it, that data, but the trend line has continued down. That paralleled with our Grand Lodges. In 1986, there were 2.8 million lodges in the United States. 2020, 898,000. So a significant drop in that period of time. In California, you're down to what, 44,500 from a much higher point. And in the giant state of Vermont, we are under 4,000 right now, Masons. And there's a retired Grand Master in our state who about 20 years ago, he was Grand Master, and now he's a Grand Secretary. And he has trouble grasping that he had 14,000 Masons in the state, and we only have 4,000 now, and how that changes everything, what you can do, what you can't do, just how much money your Grand Lodge is taking in or not. So significant drop, and it certainly is of concern. So we have the net loss of almost 2 million brothers. Yeah, 2 million brothers, a drop of 69%. And, you know, there's always that old saw, you know, that they bring it out and they say, well, kids these days, you know, they just aren't getting involved in things like they did in my day. You know, what's wrong with kids these days? Every generation has said that about the following generation, and they continue to do it. And Brother Bob here had done some writing about the different generations of the Masons, of Americans, and how each one of them had specific different needs. The greatest generation, silent generation, baby boomers, Gen X. Each of those generations came through for various reasons, did or did not get involved in the fraternity, did or did not get involved with organized religion. And actually, I'm not going to go over that talk with you. You should read Brother Bob's, it was originally a speech, right? And so I'm just going to recommend that you look that up. And then we've come down to the millennials, the Gen Zs or the iGen, and that was sort of where Brother Bob's article ended. And he talked about the millennials and how, as you see, they seek a common identity with other men. They want to be on the journey of self-development and improvement. They seek truth. They desire authenticity. They want a tribe. They seek meaning in their lives. And we've sort of been talking about that, how kind of the current generation, you know, this is the first bunch of folks who will not have it better than their parents did, you know, and may quite possibly have it worse than their parents did because they can't afford to buy a car, much less a house. And so it's problematic. And so they're looking for ways to connect. They're looking for meaning in what seems to be a very nihilistic world for them. So this is also paralleled, again, by what has been happening with the religious identification. The Pew Center has been doing their religious identification research. They update it every few years. And the religious groups that are out there, these are the numbers that they have. At this point in the United States, 65% of people, if you ask them, what's your religion? They say, I'm Christian. Now, there are a variety of different types, 17% evangelical, 21% Catholic, 12% mainline Protestant, and so on. The non-Christians are 6% of them, pretty evenly distributed between Judaism, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, and we're going to get to other faiths in just a minute. Then the unaffiliated, these are the interesting ones because when you ask somebody, so what's your religion? They say, none. And that's why they call them now nuns. They have no religious affiliation. And 28% of people these days fall into that category. 6% are agnostic, right? I don't know. There's probably something out there. Hard saying, not knowing. And he got the Vermontism, and 18% said nothing in particular, and 1% said I don't want to talk about it at all. And then there's atheists, and as Masons, we don't care about them. So there we have the breakdown. But I think this is important. So we're going to talk about the other faiths. We're going to talk about the nuns, because I feel like this is a demographic that is important to us, right? Other faiths, 2%. So who the heck are these people? 1% of them are Unitarians and other kind of liberal denominations like that. You know, and so you know, they aren't officially Christian, although like Unitarian Universalists often can be. But basically, these are religions that are sort of universal. They're just universalists. That's why they call themselves Unitarian Universalists. So the other 1%, have sometimes been called New Age. I don't like the phrase New Age. Yeah, New Age rhymes with sewage in my book. So I have like Jamie made that remark. He doesn't do New Age or hippie astrology, and I agree with him. But anyway, this other category is comprised of things like Sufism, Druidry, Gnosticism, Wicca, the various neo-paganisms, and according to the American Academy of Religions, that is a plural, and other kind of New Age things. Then there's a number of Eastern religions, Shintoism, the Sikhs, Taoism, and stuff like that. And I think this category is really interesting. Now, especially if we're talking about some of the Eastern religions, and also certainly those kind of New Age, pagany, Wiccany, Gnostic, Druid people, all of those traditions are non-dogmatic. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about that, because I think, Brother Murphy, this may have been one of the first talks I gave at Fibonacci, where we, as a freshman religion major at the University of Vermont, we got an education about the history, evolution of religion. And the official line that goes is goes like this. So prior to the coming of Paul, of the biblical Paul, that prior to him, essentially, with only a few small exceptions, all of the world's religions were basically local, ethnic kind of religions. You grew up in a little valley with a bunch of people that looked like you. You planted according to when the rains came and the plants grew and all that stuff. And you didn't actually have to have a dogma about anything. You plant your plants that time because that's what you do, right? After the river floods and then you plant your crops and then you do this. So it was all about the practice. And all the pre-Paulian religions out there are not about dogma, they're about praxis. If you look at Judaism, now later iterations of Judaism have universalized, but initially, right? I mean, it's a feature in Judaism that you argue about the theology. It's not a bug, it's a feature. There are a few things you have to do, and even that has gotten looser, but you used to have to be circumcised, you had to be kosher, you had to keep the seders, there were certain kind of high holidays you had to do. The rest of it was up for debate. And that's why there are such, so many historical tomes of different rabbis commenting on this and that, right? It wasn't about what you believed, it's what you did. Buddhism, right? Don't just do something, sit there, right? The whole thing is if you believe Buddha, you're not doing Buddhism right? It's about just doing the practice. You sit, you do it. All right. All those early world religions were about what you do, not what you believe. What you believe was not actually that important. What happened was Paul came along, and Paul was competing with this type of Judaism that was following Jesus. And he couldn't get those people to convert over to him and to his vision. And he was trying to kind of come up with a plan. And he became aware that there were a number of Greeks at that time who had gotten sort of bored with Greek gods. Greek gods are kind of petty, and and they're always sleeping with each other, and that's only fun for a while. And so they wanted to do something. They were looking for something different, and so they were, but they really were. They didn't really know about this, this Judaism thing, right? And they were called the Theophobomenoi, the God-fearers, and they were called that because, they really wanted to be Jews, or they wanted to follow this Christian thing, but of course, they're all men, and they didn't want to be kosher, and they didn't want to be circumcised. No, we draw the line there, right? But that's the thing you had to do. If you're going to convert to Judaism, you had to be kosher, you had to be circumcised. They didn't want to do that. And Paul suddenly got this brilliant insight. Wait, it's not what you do. It's what you believe, right? If you believe the right thing, then you can do all sorts of horrible stuff, but you can believe you got it, right? And so Paul is the one who innovated this notion that religion has anything to do with what you believe. It doesn't. It's what you do. And so I think that this is an important feature because as we see in my slide, which I think is going to get big again, there we go. Dogma is one of those things that this other growing set of faiths, they don't do. They're non-dogmatic, and that's popular. Okay? And we're going to see why a little bit in just a second. So non-dogmatic. A lot of them have strong Masonic influences. Certainly Wicca, modern Druidry, some of the branches of Gnosticism, and most of the neo-paganisms that were influenced by all the previous ones I just mentioned, all have strong Masonic influences. All you have to do is read the ritual. They do stuff in the north and east and south and the west. At the end of their prayers, they say, "So mote be," right? And so they're very clearly, the founder of Wicca, Gardner, was a Freemason. So a strong Masonic influence, and they're growing. The fastest growing religion in the world is Islam. The fastest growing religion in the United States is Latter-day Saints. But these others, 4 years ago, were only 1%. They've gone up. They're growing. And that's for a reason, and it pertains to my second point here, religious identification. Those unaffiliated, those nuns, aren't atheists. They're almost a third of our population. But they did a study, and most agnostics and those whose religion is nothing in particular believe in a higher power or spiritual force. They believe that there's some kind of higher spiritual thing. They believe that there's a necessity to find harmony and connection. And the increase in spiritual but not religious is broad-based, right? So men was in 2012, 18%. That's 26%. So it's growing. The increase of spiritual but not religious by age. This is where my laser pointer would have been wicked awesome. But as you can see, across the board, +9%, +10%, +8%. Certainly, it gets lower as you get older, but it's growing. It's a growing demographic. And so the nuns are, at this point, there's half as many of those as there are people who identify as Christian, right? So, and they are joining esoteric groups like crazy. Anecdotally, I know people in both the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and in Le Droit Humain, which is an unspeakable masonry for those of us in F and AM type masonries, but they are growing, and they are they're having to tell people, no, you can't join right now. We don't have enough space for you. So it's a thing. We need to pay attention to that. So how do we attract and retain them? And this was my cue to him back there. If you want to know when I was going to have slides that were that he could fade out of on occasion. So how do we attract them? The ancient charges read that 'tis now thought more expedient only to oblige them to that religion in which all men agree, leaving their particular opinions to themselves. All right? No dogma. Vermont ritual. Freemasonry is not a religion, but it's profoundly religious. Again, leaving the dogma out. And I would argue that that is exactly the beauty of Freemasonry, which is that we have a set of rituals and we have a set of symbols, and we expose our men to them. We sort of walk them through the set of experiences, and then we kind of open the door and say, look through there and see what you get. And they have an experience. And then they close the door. And we may want to talk to them about sort of how to process that information, but we never tell them they're wrong. If I look through there and I don't know, I get a vision of God and he looks like Elvis, whatever, it may be commentary on my personality, but a brother wouldn't tell me that. So this is an important feature, I think, is that and this is the thing that what we have to appeal to these nuns is that we don't have the dogma, that we have the experiences, right? We talk about Freemasonry as being a mystery religion, and this goes back to, in part, so what is a mystery? There are secrets and there are mysteries. Masons used to confuse that all the time. A secret is just a piece of information that you don't know. My social security number is a secret, mostly. But if I tell you, it's not a secret anymore. A mystery is an experience that you've had that can't be described. If you have never eaten chocolate because you're from some foreign planet, but if you've never eaten chocolate, I cannot describe it to you effectively for you to really get it. I can say, well, it's a bean, but it's kind of bitter, but it's kind of sweet, it's kind of smooth, but a little granular, and you're just not going to get it until you eat chocolate, and then you'll have an experience. And then we can look at each other and go, that was good chocolate, right? We have a shared experience. That's a mystery. And so that's when we talk about the mystic tie that Masons have. It's because we've all had that experience. Or hopefully we've all had that experience, and that's where we're going next. Because I feel like if they don't have that experience, then you get the false brothers. Right? And I don't always think that's a problem with them. I think it's one, our vetting process was bad, and two, then we didn't give them the experience that they needed. That's on us. So this is my point. If we can attract some of these brothers, and I think that these brothers are, these potential brothers are super hungry to have all this stuff. We just need to make it available to them. And so there was that talk about, where was it? It was up here, but it was also in the men's room, about whether or not we should invite and recruit brothers. And I don't know about recruiting, but I think we definitely need to get out there and let people know that we exist, and I think we need to emphasize the non-dogmatic piece. But how we do it? We give them a unique experience. We give them a Masonic experience. When we act like all the other civic organizations, we suffer the same fate. We turn into the Elks, we turn into the Rotary, they're also losing members. Oop, went too far, right? We put the brotherhood and charity before the light. And then in our ritual, it says the design of Masonic institutions to make its votaries wiser, better, and consequently happier, ... right? And then associated together, they'll naturally seek each other's welfare and happiness equally with their own. But we have to give them the light first. Just doing charity and just having brotherhood is not the light. It's just a party. And I like a party too, but that's not why I joined Freemasonry. So how we make them wiser, better, happier? Through experience. They have to have an experience. And it can't be boredom. It has to be a positive experience. And then from that, we can then give them instruction, we can give them study, and we can do that through discussion and mentorship. So let's talk briefly about the initiatic experience. So Van Gennep in 1929 talked about the 3 phases of initiation. Talked the preliminal, which is preparation, where the individual is literally or symbolically separated from their previous state. This is when we prepare our candidates. And I won't go any further because I know there are people here who have not been prepared. But that's where you prepare them. And I would argue that the preparation starts the minute somebody says, I'm curious about Freemasonry. At that moment, they have entered into the preliminal stage. And everything you say or do from that point on, every interaction you have with them should be with the intention of building up to the initiation. Which is why in some jurisdictions, and I've tried to get it to happen in some of mine, but when the candidate goes to their first degree, there are some jurisdictions where they will pick you up at your house and take you to the degree. There's a different headset that happens if you didn't drive yourself there. You are putting your trust in somebody at that point. And if they aren't all your uncles, even then, it might be pushing it. But so all those things, everything you do, if you're doing the investigation process for the candidate, which tell me you are, when they give you the application and the petition and you meet with them, that entire process should be intended to build suspense for them. It shouldn't be like, hey, we do some stuff and we make pancakes every Sunday a month, and you want to join? Right? It's not impressive. We have to build that. Then, second stage is liminal, threshold marked by disorientation, trial, and rebirth. We'll leave it there. But that needs to be an important experience because it's going to determine whether or not they really get an experience out of it. Because there's a difference between translation and transformation. This comes from author Ken Wilber. Right? Translation is when I give you a piece of information, and like I am right now, and you take it and you integrate it into what you already know. And you find a way to make sense of it. You say, yeah, okay, I've just added to my knowledge. Transformation happens when you have a piece of information, often not intellectual, it's more experiential, but when you receive a piece of information that does not fit into your previous structure of understanding of how things are, it doesn't fit into your filing cabinet. You have to take your entire filing system of what you thought was true, tear it down, and find a way to make it fit. That's how you get your rebirth. That's how transformation happens. And it always feels like death. Something dies because what you thought was true is not. If you don't have that experience, if you just said, hey, I went to a room, people did some stuff. They gave me a little book to memorize. I'm good, right? They did not get an initiation. It has to impact you. And so, and I'm going to answer a question that somebody asked Jamie, I believe, which was, so how do you know you're making progress as you're working your way up, up through the different realms? And there are each one of those realms, as Jamie was talking about, he was talking about the 4 elemental realms, right? And And if you are doing the work, if you are actually making yourself a better person and not just volunteering to do some nice stuff, if you're actually making yourself a better person, then the first thing you do is you have to work through those aspects of your personality that probably aren't helpful. So if in those orders, non-Masonic, that pertain to doing that kind of work, if you're doing the Kabbalistic tree kind of stuff, when you're working on your water level, then that's your chance to address all those relationship issues that you never really worked through. You know, those either relationships with mom and dad, relationships with the person in your dream that broke your heart and you've never really got over them, or whatever that is. Those things that are holding you back from being your highest and best self, your most balanced self. That's what you have to work on. And if you aren't working on, if there's nothing that you have to work on, then you're not moving up the tree. That's all, right? You know, and then actually up that tree of life that he showed, each of those paths has a vice and a virtue that they say comes out. And so as you're working your way up your spiritual development, suddenly you'll have to address this vice that you have, and you will hopefully move beyond that and then develop the virtue. So there actually is a tracking method for that stuff. So let's see. Now we're getting to the post-liminal, and which is reintegration through lectures, instruction, and mentorship. And that's the mentorship. I don't know. A lot of the lodges in Vermont, you get your third degree, and they say, glad to have you aboard. We'll probably never talk to you again unless we want you to help out with a fundraiser. And that's sort of the way it is. And no one coaches you through stuff. Nobody talks you through stuff. We don't make them. In Vermont, a lot of lodges don't even make them learn the final lecture. We have to learn the entered apprentice and fellow craft lectures, but we don't have to learn the Master Mason lecture. And I would say that Fibonacci Lodge that Chris and I are in is different. But that's that piece. So the process of initiation, and how am I doing on time anyway? I'm good? Okay. So the process of that whole process of initiation is actually that tearing down of who you are. That we're talking about the preliminal, where you're sort of preparing the person, and then when you're in the actual liminal space, where you're really sort of stripping away who they are. It is moving down Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I know Maslow's passé, and there are actually better transpersonal psychology models out there, but this is the easy one to understand. And basically, so what you're doing is, right, let's say I am a highly accomplished state legislator, which I am, and I'm feeling pretty confident about myself. I've got a lot of achievement. People respect me. But then I go into this room of, they pick me up, and I don't know these guys. And they certainly aren't treating me like I'm anything special. And, and so my esteem, I'm kind of like, I don't know how I fit into this yet. And then, I get there and they aren't really treating me like friends yet. And so I don't know. I'm not feeling the love. I'm not feeling the belonging. Then we move into that whole piece where we are, like I said, they pick you up in the car, so you aren't driving yourself. They put you in scenarios where you really start to become unsure of your safety, your sense of security of your body, your resources. You aren't sure. And then actually right down to your physiological, where you may not be able to have independent movement. I think the Masons are picking up what I'm saying here, right? So what's happening is we're moving you down that hierarchy of need. And as we move you down that hierarchy of need, your cognitive state follows it. We all do this, right? And when I can feel absolutely secure and positive about myself. I feel relatively self-actualized. And then I go to the high school reunion, and the mean kid that was always mean to me comes up and says something mean to me, and I go, darn it, right? Boom, I'm 12 years old. Right? It happens, right? If you don't think it happens, right? You go home, visit your mom, right? I'm an adult. You go home, visit your mom. Mom says, when you come in, make sure you turn off the outside light. You're like, Mom, I'm 30 years old. I can do that. Why do you have to remind me, Mom? Gosh. Right? Yeah. It's because our cognitive state moves down. And when we move down into that physiological state, right? When you are so scared that you have lost your words, perhaps even your bodily functions, then you have moved back into infant status. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to move you down that, so that all that stuff that you've already pre-established, you already think you have it all worked out. And we need to break that up before we can introduce anything new. Because how we put you back together is once you've been through it, we're like, hey, look, you're going to be fine. And in fact, you're among friends and brothers. You're not only just safe, and we're going to look out for you. We're going to take care of Chris when he needs his, to go to hospice. We're going to look out for you. Your safety is going to be okay. And we have brotherly love. And as you start to move into that, right? You start out, you're really insecure. You're like a baby. I don't know how to move in lodge. I don't know what to do. Will I do something wrong? And we teach you how to walk in a particular ritual way in the lodge. And just like with small children, we start to teach them a language, just like we do with the Masons. We have a very specific words in our lexicon that you don't find everywhere. I do not remember once in high school coming up and saying, I think they're a Cowan. Not a single one. You would have thought. So we start to learn a new language, just like we did when we were little kids. We're rebuilding you from the ground up. And then we start giving you things to learn. And you do a good job. And we say, good job. And your esteem starts to go up. And so we rebuild you as a new person. It's the same model that people use when they join brainwashing cults and the US military. Right? It's boot camp. It's just in a slightly different format, but it's still the same idea. We're going to break you down and then build you into a new person. And so that's what we're doing. That's what all initiation is. And it's just how you do it. And part of that is we have special openings and closings, which I was going to talk about. It is a reiteration of the roles. It's a reiteration of our connection to each other, to the spirit. I talked about secrecy a little bit, but even that, if you want somebody to learn the lessons that you just taught them, you want them to really remember them, keep them in their mind all the time. Say, don't you say a word about this, because they're going to think all the time, oh God, I hope I don't slip. I won't say that. No, I won't. No. Right? It stays with them. It's one of the tools. Special clothes, right? If you've ever done martial arts or any sports team, you're putting on a uniform, whatever that is, you're getting your game face on. It's changing your cognition, right? You're getting your head in the game. Don't wear blue jeans and shorts to lodge unless you wear a tuxedo all the day, every day, and then jeans and t-shirt would be different. So go for it. Right? But special clothes, make it something special. And trainment, we keep doing all the same stuff at all the same times. We say a lot of the words at the same time. We know that if you take people and you put them together long enough, and especially if you get them moving together, in certain kind of choreographed movements, they will start to breathe at the same rate. Their hearts will start to align. Their brain firings will start to align as well. And that's how you build teams. That's how you build group cohesiveness. That's how you build an egregor, right? That is, you're aligning us all together. All of that is the stuff that we're doing in our ritual and our post-ritual if we try. And then, like I said, mentorship, and then the philosophical exploration. But don't go into dogma. So that's my talk in a nutshell. And I've always said that anything that can be put in a nutshell probably belongs there. But this is I just gave you my 2-hour talk in whatever time I took. And so thank you for allowing me this chance to introduce this. And so thank you. Yeah.
Any questions?
No. Oh, yeah.
That we could kind of United Grand Lodge and all that change more to evolve more so it doesn't die out in the sense that like take some ideas from the other traditions, maybe it's ideas from continental masonry. Like how can we kind of what can we all do to try to help them change with the times in that regard so it doesn't dwindle?
Well, I mean, I think there are a few things. You know, certainly in the state I live, often the lodge you belong to is the lodge in the town where you live, right? And so we have this geographic base, and I think traditional observance lodges and other lodge systems like the Widow's Sons, for example, sort of break that up. And I think we need to move away from sort of that geographical connection. We need to find ways to, again, find affinities for people, you know, and I feel like people who are in sort of like traditional observance lodges, sort of our affinity is philosophy and education and ritual perfection and, you know, making sure the experience is truly meaningful. But that doesn't mean that other groups couldn't also have a lot of those same features, just they're doing it in whatever mode or model they want to. I think we can't just keep saying, hey, you all, we're not going to change, but why don't you join us? Because that'll be nice. You know, we need to find a way to make ourselves meaningful to them, right? It's not that people aren't coming because they are bad people, right? If you own a store and customers stop coming, it's not because they're all jerks. It's that your customer service sucks, your advertising sucks, or you're not selling a product that they need anymore. And I hope I just established that and Chris Hodop established that we actually have a product that they need. They probably need it more than we've needed it for a very, very long time. And that ability to be civil, ability to be different and accept that and honor that. And so I feel like we have the product. The Northern Masonic jurisdiction is working on the advertising, and you know, and we just need to really one, not be jerks. And I have been to lodges where you go in and you sit down and the old past master sits down to you and says, cut your hair, hippie. You know, it's like, what the? Yeah. So, but, you know, I think a lot of it is again, finding ways to make ourselves more relevant and without giving up those landmarks and that connection to the tradition that Chris was talking about, and those kinds of really crucial, important pieces. And I think the strategy has been in the last several decades is to try to make ourselves more palatable by becoming the elks or the moose, or pick an animal lodge, you know, and rather than being authentic Masonry. If we're Masons, we need to give them a Masonic experience, a Masonic dinner, like a table lodge, right? A Masonic, all sorts of things. There's, you know, we could add Masonry to a whole bunch of stuff. I met a brother once from Haiti who said, well, at least where he lived, when he got his third degree, he said the entire lodge marched him through town, went to his house, and put a Masonic altar in his house, so that he always had a place to meditate and pray and was expected to do so, right? You know, there are things we can do to make ourselves relevant in all sorts of ways. I don't know, a Masonic horseshoe tournament that we somehow do ritualistically. I don't know. This is our goal, and our mission is to figure out ways to reach out and do that stuff. So, if that helped, am I out of time yet?
No.
Gosh.
Well, if you have any more questions,
I usually talk way too long, so that's why I keep checking. Yeah.
Yes, great presentation. It got me thinking about a few things. One of which is that the craft lays out tools for manuals. And it seems that with the idea of preservation, or not with debt and everything, based on that paradigm, why do you think it is that we look out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's an important piece, right? I mean, we need to make ourselves relevant, but if we aren't bought into it ourselves, right? You know, we have to be fully engaged ourselves. We have to not be false Masons. You know, if we're doing that work, if we have that enthusiasm, if we have those things, then other people will want to join. Right. You know, and it's okay to not welcome everyone. It's really okay being in the Grand Lodge and having to disinvite some people who were let in, they were not good people. And so, you know, I feel like it really should be. We need to button up our own house. We need to really make ourselves everything we wished we were, and then I think just from that will have a lot of power. You know, that and we may never go back to the glory days of numbers. I don't care. You know, because quantity without quality, in my mind, is useless. I mean, we have an edifice complex. We have this fetish for big buildings, right? You know, and that's why we have to have so many members, because we have to keep paying the rent on that darn building. You know, and I think we need to let go of that. I mean, you know, that stuff is fine, but it is not critical to the Masonic experience. You could have an initiatic experience in a high hill or a low dale without fancy light shows and wicked cool pillars and all the other bells and whistles. It can be done. We just have to, it has to come from in here. It has to be where we first prepared ourselves. Yeah. And you had.
So I seen the word
Yeah.
when do you think that became
We have it. Should we? I mean, because, you know, it goes back to orthodoxy, you know, that once you have a set of hard and fast rules that, and I do feel like there are moral lines we need to have. We need to have good boundaries. I think in every aspect of our lives, healthy boundaries are important. So we need to have our morals. We need to have those foundational principles. But But I think we also have a lot of stuff that we just acquired. In Vermont, we're starting to look at, that whole thing about, well, we need to do it that way. And we're like, it's not in the ancient charges. It might be in the bylaws that we always have to have our reports in by May 10th, or that the price of our dues has to be in our bylaws, which is stupid, because every time you raise your dues, you have to change your bylaws. But for a while, it was in the bylaws that you had to do that, and so there are things that it's always been done that way. Well, it's always been done that way because when I came in, that's the way it was being done. But the week before is when they made the change, but I don't know that. So it's always been done that way. And so I feel like a lot of our dogma is just that. It's okay for us to have our principles and to not to, but I think what you'll find is that if we actually give people an experience, if we give them the praxis, do the ritual, experience that connection, experience, the grand architect of the universe in your heart, experience the mystic tie with the brothers, then all those principles will just naturally flow. We don't have to arbitrarily impose them. We don't have to say, well, to be a Mason, you have to be a Mason, you have to be a Christian. There are brothers out there to this day that still will make that proclamation. There are lodges that may not, I don't know if it's written in their bylaws, but it's certainly the practice. And those are dogma. And those I think are not helpful to our fraternity. You've already gone, we'll get to him first.
We'll give one last one.
Okay. And I'm pretty much deaf, so. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Masonic propagation through cosmetology. It's but no, but I think your point in a way reinforces what I was saying, which is that you have a bunch of people who have a strong passion for it, who are showing up, and they're getting a haircut from you. And because they have a passion and they are having those conversations wherever they go, probably whenever one or two of them get together, they're having those conversations, and the people around them are picking up on that energy and they're picking up on that passion, and they want to be part of that. I feel like we lost the whole salon movement, from the European salon movement, where the intellectuals would get together and say, let's talk about something. I hear there's this new crazy guy called Newton, and he's got these ideas, and let's talk about it, and so we don't have that level of discourse as like we used to. And I feel like every opportunity we can have to get brothers together in those places. And that's why I was only kind of joking about having the Masonic horseshoe tournament. Because if you've got a bunch of people at whatever event it is that were Masons, and they were passionate about their Masonry, and they also just happen to like to do this same hobby together, other people that have that same hobby interest are going to pick up on that excitement. And they're going to say, there's something extra there, and I want to be part of that. So thank you again.
Thank you, brother.